Thanks for coming. Really happy to be here today and to tell you about a project that I've been working on for a few years. It's a company called Cure Forward. My background, I worked in the life science technologies industry for a long time, about 15 or 16 years with a company called Life Technologies. And while I was there, I had a chance to really help bring next-gen sequencing technology into healthcare through a series of diagnostic test partnerships across the globe. In doing so, I managed to meet a lot of interesting people, and one of the themes that I heard is that the future of precision medicine will be much less about large clinical trials as an evidence base and more about an experience-driven evidence base that we can learn from comparative cases out there in healthcare. And everybody wanted that, so we went and created something called the Genetic Care Interchange. That was a big infrastructure intensive project that brought together 16 institutions to share their health data. It was a fantastic journey. I loved it, but I realized eventually that the idea was big and expensive and hard to scale. I actually spun that out of Life Technologies and started thinking about how to turn that into something that would be truly scalable to achieve this idea of a precision medicine dynamic living evidence base. And that's what Cure Forward is. So patients can take charge of their precision medicine cancer care by getting their data. Cure Forward is an online precision medicine platform, and I'll tell you about how that works. So we know, but it's worth saying, that every therapy that's used in practice today was proven at some point by a clinical trial. If you think about that a little bit more, the patients who participate in clinical trials have the opportunity to access the newest treatments, maybe before anybody else does. They might work, they might not work, it's research, but there's a chance that they could access something new that could help them in their care. Now there's a ton of clinical trials happening in oncology today, over 2,000 industry-led trials and another 3,000 academic-led trials. This is an abundant opportunity, and you would think that patients would be more involved, but in fact we have a participation problem in clinical trials where 85% of cancer patients don't know that a clinical trial is an option in their care. And the consequence of that is too few patients apply to clinical trials, and so only 3 to 5% of patients ultimately have a chance to participate. Now this is a problem that we all share that's totally visible. Joe Biden himself spoke at ASCO this year and said, it's much too hard for cancer patients to find and enroll in clinical trials, that needs to be fixed. He said, we can't change this through legislation, you need to solve it. And he really enlisted the innovation of the entire field. Now let's say you did want to get into a trial today. How would you go about that? Well, you and your doctor might know of a trial. Your doctor might know something that's happening within the walls of the institution. It's actually pretty difficult. Even within an institution, a doctor might not know of a trial that's happening down the hall. You could do your own searching. It turns out that's really hard. Some of the sites, clinicaltrials.gov, which is supposed to be the gold standard, is often out of date, not complete, or inaccurate. And so it can be very frustrating even if you do want to find a clinical trial. And there have been innovations. Everybody's trying to make this better. People are making better online search tools at different websites. You can search through new interfaces, but those interfaces are fundamentally limited by the quality and completeness of the data that underlies them. People try marketing clinical trials. It's hard to do also. It's hard to hit that patient at the specific moment of need where they need something new in their care. Another thing that people try to do is mine databases, whether they be EMRs to look at patients who are active in a health system, or whether it's looking at registries of people who've said, yes, I'd be willing to consider a trial. But those efforts often struggle as well, largely because of two reasons. When you're mining EMR data, it's very hard to recontact those patients. You can alert their physician that a trial might be available and suitable for them. But it's too hard to recontact, and the introductions just don't happen. In registry programs, it's a yield problem. You might find 300 people in a research registry, but very few who match your clinical trial parameters, but very few of them are still looking for a trial and still relevant for that trial in the course of their care. So all these solutions have drawbacks. And it's not to say that people are misguided or wrong. It's just it's a hard problem. And so we've been working at it too. And we thought about it, and modifying the system that we have doesn't seem to be working. Maybe there's another way to come about this. Maybe there's a new system. And as you think about it more, there are forces that are converging in our lives right now that could make a fundamental change in clinical trial recruitment possible. One of those is science. We have the benefit of 40 years of the war on cancer to understand the genomic drivers of cancer. And the molecular, and what's resulted from that is a new wave of molecularly targeted therapies and new trials that are based on your molecular alterations, not necessarily just the condition that you have. At the same time, there have been policy changes. In the last 3 years, it's been amazing to watch the work that's coming out of the Office of Civil Rights and Health and Human Services Administration to make data available and accessible to individuals in the form and format of their choice, the manner of their choice, and to the person of their choice. And then simultaneously, we've become used to using technology in our lives to become the masters of the different things that we have to get done. Well, those three things together make it possible for perhaps the patient to be at the center of clinical trial recruitment. Now, if a patient has molecular data, it opens up new avenues of opportunity for them in their care. Now, this is not publication-worthy data, I'm sure. This is me looking at what's available out there in public databases and constructing search terms to help me identify what is the difference in the opportunity set that you might have as a patient if you have a molecular profile or you don't. And it varies by the kind of cancer you have. In lung cancer, though, you could actually double the opportunity set if you expand your opportunity set to include molecularly qualified trials that are not necessarily disease-specific. Now, that's important to, wow, that's 2x, that's huge. But as you look into the rarer cancers, as you get rarer, and so many cancers are rare, the opportunity can be 18-fold. This is cholangiocarcinoma. There are 39 cholangiocarcinoma-specific trials recruiting right now. If that patient had a molecular profile and looked at all their different opportunities, that's a total opportunity set of over 700 trials. Of course, that gets narrowed by their particular condition. So everybody wants to be patient B and create all the opportunities that they can for themselves and their own care. And if they open up, if they have that molecular data, their opportunities can become apparent to them. So we created a place where people can do that for themselves in their care, that they can solve their disease through science. And we do that first by helping people find a test and get their data. We then help them understand what's been found in their cancer genome. And we've done that through some unique content that I'll show you in a moment. We help people find trials in a totally different way, and we've identified some other areas where we can really make a difference to help people find maybe those approved treatments that are available for their condition through experts, or to share their wisdom with one another in community. So these are the changes that have happened in health policy over the last few years. Up until 2014, it was really uncertain across the United States whether a patient had the right to access their molecular diagnostic test data. There was actually an exception to the Hipaa data access right that didn't make it clear if a patient could. And in fact, there was a patchwork of regulations, and in some states you couldn't get your data very easily. So that was removed in 2014 and enforced by October that year. Then there were some subsequent clarifications of the Hipaa data access rule, making sure that patients could get their data in an electronic format as structured data, not as a PDF, in the manner of their choice, meaning by email, even if it's to an unsecured email address, and then to the person of their choice, meaning any person or company that they specify as the destination for their data. So what we did is turn that into a website experience for them where they can make their data request of any diagnostic lab in the country. If that data request isn't satisfied quickly, they can then assert their data right through a second letter that goes out to the laboratory that says, hey, it's my data access right, and you can look here for, to brush up on that. And then finally, the patient can go through our platform to actually complain if their data isn't delivered in a 30-day window. So once they have their data, we created a way for them to learn about their genes. So let's say in a 300 gene panel, you had mutations in 7 genes. Well, for each of those genes, you could go to Cure Forward and retrieve a gene story. These are written by journalists who write for magazines like Wired and Scientific American. So these people write for lay audiences, but they're science writers. So you can learn about that gene, not so much so you can find medical recommendations, but so that you can have a conversation with your doctor and your family about what's been found. And then we have this clinical trial exchange, and I'll walk you through it because this is the core of what we do. A trial recruiter sets up their search on our platform. We actually make it really easy for them. We draw all the data out of clinicaltrials.gov every night, and now we're drawing the data through a new API out of the NCI clinical trial reporting platform. That information helps a trial recruiter pre-populate their search in our platform. Once that search is set up, it's ready. Now patients come along, and we've had 35,000 patients come through our platform already. Many of those patients are enrolling and posting their information to our clinical trial exchange. Once that patient posts, they become visible to all those trial recruiters who have set up their searches. If there's a match, we send a notification to the search, to the person who's operating that search, and they can look at that patient's anonymous profile and decide if they want to invite them to apply to their trial. If that patient accepts that invitation, we then introduce the patient to the clinical investigator at the site of their choice. And that's a designated clinical trial patient recipient who is then able to see that patient's contact information. So in this way, we've changed it. Patients aren't looking around on the internet through resources that are incomplete or inaccurate. Instead, they're just posting themselves and trials are showing up in their inbox. It's a totally different way. So what makes it different is that a patient initiates this process, and it's at a moment of need. They need something new in their care. It enables the trial recruiters. This is important because they have the most perfect information in the whole trial recruitment ecosystem. They know where their sites are. They know where their sites are going to be. They know their specific molecular alterations that they're seeking and the specific inclusion and exclusion criteria from a medical perspective. The searches are private, meaning that these trial recruiters can be completely straightforward in their search terms without any worry that their competitors are going to see what their research interests are. And it's precision medicine capable, but it's not precision medicine specific. In fact, we handle trials equally whether they're molecularly selective or not. And the way it looks to a trial recruiter is that you've got a search console for a particular trial, and you can look at patients with their specifics. It's token-based, so this is a truly pay-for-performance trial recruitment model. Trial recruiters love this. They've been looking for it for a long time, and they haven't yet found one. The pricing for searches is based on tokens, and those tokens are allocated based on the scarcity of the search terms that you're looking for. When a patient accepts an invitation, tokens are consumed, and when you run out of tokens, a trial recruiter buys more to replenish their account. It's a very simple transaction model and keeps the emphasis on the recruitment. So we're working with every sector of healthcare. We're working with the drug companies, we're working with the CROs, we're working with the nonprofits who need more resources to help patients find trials. We're working with the diagnostic labs who view this as a way to add further value to the diagnostic test data that they generate so that every patient has more ways to use that data. And our early experience, this is what I promised I'd share, is it's been very positive, but we have learned that we actually need to guide people. And so we created a special guide program where every single person gets a guide in their use of the platform. That guide first assesses whether that patient is really at a moment where they need to be considering trial options. Then we help them develop their profile and take it all the way through to introducing their profile to those trial recruiters, generating matches and delivering those to patients so they can accept their trial invitations. Now, as we do that, we're learning every time we interact with a patient to make the software better and smarter. And we can keep on refining on more granular improvements. So last year I was here and I gave one of the Oral Ignite talks. And I talked about creating an ecosystem where a person fighting with cancer could do all these things, to get a test, to get a second opinion, to understand what's happening in their DNA and so on. And a year later, I'm here to report that we've made a lot of progress on that. We've actually released the way for people to find a test and get their molecular data. We've introduced the way for them to get intelligent about their data through gene stories. We've opened up the clinical trial exchange, and we've actually made patient matches into trials. So we're excited. It's a story that will keep on unfolding over time, and I'm pleased to share it with you here today.
We have time for a couple of questions.
What if the oncologist isn't excited about ordering the test? Do you have a way of getting it ordered from somebody else?
It's a good question. So the question is about whether doctors are engaged in ordering the test in the first place. We don't do what you just suggested. We just help people identify what their test options are so they can talk with their doctor about it. If their doctor isn't on board with that, they might want to talk with more physicians to get other ideas.
Actually, I had a question. I was wondering, so what would you say is the most impactful way to get patients involved in this process? I mean, you talk about kind of the narratives and other things, but in your experience, what has been the central component to have them actually buy into this?
Yeah, I love the question. In fact, I left out probably one of our biggest strengths, which is our outreach directly to consumers where they live and where they're thinking about their care. We have built up a community of 10,000 people in Facebook already who are actively following us and with whom we're sharing information about cancer and clinical trials. We've built up a followership of 1,000 people on Twitter. And this is just 3 months in. We just turned it on. So this is very exciting that we've had this kind of excitement already. In addition, we're launching through, we've been promoting the platform through conventional media channels, NPR ads, things like that. And all of those things, we see an immediate impact wherever we launch because the demand is so high. Was there one more question?
Yeah, just simply, do you reach Europe?
I wish. So we will. We started in the US. We have set up data privacy that's at a global standard. And the effort to expand to Europe is mainly about new business development to bring in the new clinical trials. So yes, but we're not there yet.